Dr. Ethan Voss had always believed his work studying extinct alien civilizations was purely academic, fascinating, but ultimately detached from the present reality of galactic politics. That illusion shattered the moment Ambassador Thorne's hologram materialized in his laboratory. Dr. Voss, the stern-faced diplomat's image flickered slightly. You are to report to Galactic Council Station Omega-7 immediately. A transport will arrive within the hour. Ethan looked up from his microscope, where he'd been examining fossilized Ziri genetic samples. Ambassador, I'm in the middle of important research. Your research is exactly why you're needed. Thorne's expression grew grave. How much do you know about the current status of the Ziri species? A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Current status? The Ziri have been extinct for 3 years. The hegemony war wiped them out completely. He gestured to his samples. These fossils are all that remain of one of the galaxy's most genetically unique species. Not completely extinct, Thorne said quietly. One survived. Ethan's hand stilled. That's impossible. The reports were clear, total planetary annihilation, no survivors. The reports were wrong. A single Ziri female was recovered from a deep space research vessel 6 months ago. She was in cryogenic suspension. Thorne paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Her name is Caliph, and she represents the absolute final chance to prevent the complete extinction of her people. The implications hit Ethan like a physical blow. The genetic bottleneck, with only one individual, even if she could reproduce, the species would still be doomed to extinction within a few generations. Unless we could find compatible genetic material from another species. Thorne's gaze intensified. We've been conducting compatibility trials across the galaxy for months. Testing thousands of candidates from dozens of species. Ethan's mouth went dry. And? You're the only match, Dr. Voss. Out of thousands tested, your genetic profile is the only one compatible with Ziri biology. The only one that could produce viable offspring. The laboratory seemed to spin around Ethan. He gripped the edge of his workstation, mind reeling. You're asking me to participate in some kind of breeding program? We're asking you to make a choice, Thorne said carefully. A choice that could save an entire species from extinction. Or let it die with dignity if that's what you decide. Ethan stared at the fossilized samples before him, all that remained of a people whose art, music, and philosophy had captivated him for years. The Ziri had been builders of impossible cities, creators of living mathematics, poets who composed in mathematical theorems. And now there was one left. What happens if I say no? Then the Ziri become truly extinct. Caliph lives out her days alone, the last of her kind, carrying the weight of an entire species' end. The transport's engines hummed in the distance, growing closer. Ethan closed his eyes, thinking of all the Ziri artifacts he'd studied, their hauntingly beautiful music he'd reconstructed from ancient recordings, their elegant genetic structures that had made them so perfectly adapted to their world. I'll come, he said finally. I need to meet her. To understand what this really means. Thorne nodded solemnly. She's waiting for you, Dr. Voss. And the choice, whatever you decide, will be entirely yours. The containment facility was sterile white, designed more like a medical suite than a prison, but Ethan could see the subtle force field shimmering at the doorways. As the guards escorted him through the final security checkpoint, his heart hammered against his ribs. She's been informed of your arrival, Dr. Helena Cross, the facility's chief medical officer, said as they walked. I should warn you, she's not what most people expect. The Ziri were known for their dignity, even in captivity. The door hissed open, and Ethan stepped into a spacious room designed to mimic natural environments, soft lighting, living plants, even a small water feature. And there, seated gracefully on a low-cushioned platform, was Caliph. She was breathtaking in a way that transcended species. Her skin was indeed pale purple, with an opalescent quality that seemed to catch and reflect light. Dark curls framed a face that was undeniably alien yet somehow familiar, high cheekbones, large eyes the color of deep amethyst, and features that spoke of ancient nobility. She wore simple flowing garments that suggested comfort rather than ceremony. When she saw him, she rose with fluid grace, her movements carrying the unconscious elegance of someone born to leadership. She was tall, nearly matching his height, and when their eyes met, Ethan felt a jolt of recognition, not physical, but something deeper. "Dr. Ethan Voss," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made his name sound like poetry. "I am Caliph of the Third Spiral, last daughter of the Ziri people." She inclined her head slightly, a gesture of respect, not submission. "The honor is mine," Ethan managed, surprised by how inadequate his words felt. "I've studied your people for years. Your civilization was magnificent." A shadow passed across her features. "Was." "Yes, that is the correct tense now, isn't it?" She gestured to a pair of chairs near the artificial garden. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss, and I suspect little time for pretense." As they settled across from each other, Ethan noticed how she maintained perfect posture without seeming rigid. Everything about her spoke of discipline and control, yet her eyes held depths of grief that no amount of dignity could completely mask. "They have told you why you are here," she said. "It wasn't a question. The genetic compatibility. The possibility of offspring." Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I want you to know, I haven't agreed to anything yet. I needed to meet you first." "Good." Her response surprised him. "I would not respect a man who made such a decision lightly." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Dr. Voss, in your studies of my people, what did you learn of our mating customs?" Ethan cleared his throat. "That Ziri formed deep emotional bonds before physical ones. That you believe the mind and heart must be aligned before the body could create life." "Precisely." Calitha's eyes held his. "What the council proposes is not mere breeding, as they might do with animals. If we are to do this thing, if you choose to help preserve my people, it must be done with mutual respect and, eventually, genuine connection. And if that connection never comes, then we will know we tried with honor, and my people will end as they lived, with dignity intact." She paused, studying his face. "But I sense in you a kindness that gives me hope. Tell me about yourself, Ethan Voss." Not the scientist, but the man. For the first time since arriving, Ethan felt himself relax slightly. "I'm probably not what you'd expect for such an important task. I'm quiet, I spend most of my time with ancient artifacts rather than people. I've never been married, never had children of my own." "Perhaps," Caliph said softly, "that is exactly what this situation requires. Someone who understands the value of what has been lost, and the preciousness of what might yet be saved." Their conversation continued for 2 hours, and when the guards finally came to escort him out, Ethan realized something had shifted. He was no longer thinking about genetic compatibility or species preservation. He was thinking about the loneliness in her eyes, and the strange way it seemed to echo his own. Over the following week, Ethan found himself returning to Calitha's quarters daily. What had begun as formal discussions about genetics and cultural preservation gradually transformed into something deeper, genuine conversation between two souls who had each, in their own way, been isolated by their dedication to knowledge. "Your people's music," Ethan said during their fourth meeting, settling into what had become his usual chair. "I've tried to reconstruct it from the harmonic patterns in your architectural ruins, but I know I'm missing something essential." Calitha's eyes brightened with the first real joy he'd seen from her. "Music was the foundation of everything for us. Mathematics, architecture, even our genetics, all were expressions of the great symphony." She closed her eyes and began to hum, a melody so hauntingly beautiful it seemed to resonate in his bones. The sound was unlike anything human vocal cords could produce, multi-layered, with harmonics that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her throat. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes as the melody wove itself around his heart. "That was the song of growing," she said when the last note faded. "We sang it when children were born, when crops were planted, when love was declared. It was our way of saying that life continues, that hope persists. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, Ethan whispered, and meant it. I could teach you a simpler melody, Caliph offered. One your human voice could manage. They spent the next hour with her patiently helping him find the right tones, her hands occasionally brushing his as she demonstrated finger positions that accompanied the songs. Each touch sent warmth through him, and he began to notice how her skin seemed to glow faintly when she was happy. Tell me about Earth music, she requested. I have heard some recordings, but I want to know what moves you. Ethan found himself describing everything from classical symphonies to folk songs, even humming a lullaby his mother had sung to him as a child. Caliph listened with complete attention, occasionally asking questions that showed how quickly she grasped the emotional contexts behind the melodies. Your people and mine are not so different, she mused. We both understand that music is the language of the heart, the way we speak what cannot be said in words. As the days passed, their conversations ranged far beyond music. She told him about Ziyuri philosophy, their belief that every individual was a note in a vast cosmic composition, unique and irreplaceable. He shared human literature with her, reading passages from poets who had captured the beauty of loss and renewal. This Shakespeare, she said after he finished reading a sonnet about love transcending death, he understood something my people believed deeply, that connection between souls can survive the ending of all physical things. Do you believe that? Ethan asked. That love can outlast death. I have to, she replied quietly. It is the only way I can bear being the last. If the love my people shared, the bonds between us, simply vanished when they died, then I truly am alone in a way that no being should ever be. Without thinking, Ethan reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. Her skin was warm, with a texture like silk, and she didn't pull away. You're not alone, he said. Not anymore. She looked down at their joined hands, her amethyst eyes soft. When I first saw you, I thought you were just another scientist, someone who saw me as a specimen to be studied. But you see me as Caliph, don't you? Not just the last Ziyuri, but me. Yes, he said simply. I see you. She lifted their joined hands and pressed his palm against her cheek. Her skin was even warmer there, and he could feel the gentle pulse of blood beneath it, alien, but undeniably alive, undeniably real. I have been thinking, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, about what it would mean to choose this path. Not for duty, not for species preservation, but because I find myself caring what happens to you. Wanting to know what our tomorrow might look like. Ethan's heart raced. Caliph. I know it is soon. I know the circumstances are impossible. But my people believe that the heart knows what it knows, regardless of time or logic. She searched his eyes. Do you feel it too? This connection growing between us? He could deny it, could stick to the safe territory of duty and genetics. But looking into her eyes, seeing the vulnerable hope there, he found he couldn't lie. Yes, he breathed. I feel it too. The weight of the decision had kept Ethan awake for 3 nights. He stood at the observation deck of the station, staring out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them had once been the Ziyuri homeworld, now nothing but cosmic dust and memory. The council is growing impatient, Dr. Cross had warned him that morning. They need an answer soon. The fertility window won't remain optimal indefinitely. But this wasn't about fertility windows or genetic optimization anymore. This was about Caliph, about the way she hummed softly when she thought he wasn't listening, about how her eyes lit up when she laughed at his clumsy attempts at Ziyuri pronunciation. This was about choosing to step into the unknown with someone who had become precious to him. When he entered her quarters that evening, Caliph was seated by the artificial garden, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up as he approached, and he could see the question in her eyes, the same question that had been haunting them both. I've made my decision, he said quietly, taking his usual seat across from her. She straightened, preparing herself for whatever he might say. And I want to do this. Not for the Council, not for genetic preservation, but for us. For what we could become together. He leaned forward, reaching for her hands. But only if it's what you truly want, too. Not what duty demands, but what your heart tells you. Kalith was quiet for a long moment, studying their joined hands. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. For weeks after they found me, I wished I had died with my people. The loneliness was consuming. But these past days with you, I have remembered what it feels like to want tomorrow to come. She lifted one hand to touch his face. Yes, Ethan. My heart says yes. He leaned into her touch, then slowly stood, drawing her up with him. They stood close, not quite embracing, both aware that crossing this threshold would change everything. I've never done anything like this before, he admitted. I don't know how to be what you need. Neither do I, she whispered. My people's customs, our courtship rituals, they're all lost now. We must create our own way. She stepped closer, and he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. When she looked up at him, her pupils had dilated, the purple of her irises darkening to deep violet. May I kiss you? He asked, the question coming out rougher than he intended. Instead of answering with words, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two different species learning each other's rhythms. But as she melted against him, as her arms came up to circle his neck, it deepened into something that transcended biology entirely. Her skin grew warmer under his touch, taking on a subtle luminescence that he'd noticed before when she was emotional. She was beautiful in a way that defied description, not just her alien features, but the grace with which she moved, the intelligence in her eyes, the courage it took to open her heart to him despite everything she'd lost. Are you certain? He whispered against her lips. I am certain, she replied, her voice husky with emotion and desire. I choose you, Ethan Voss. I choose us. What followed was tender and careful, two beings learning how to love across the boundaries of species and circumstance. They moved together to her sleeping chamber, where soft lighting created an intimate atmosphere. She showed him which touches made her gasp with pleasure, while he learned the places where her skin was most sensitive, marveling at how she seemed to glow brighter with each caress. Their joining was gentle but intense, filled with whispered endearments in both their languages. When she called his name in the moment of her climax, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that seemed to resonate through his entire being, he knew that what they were creating was far more than just the possibility of new life, it was hope itself, given form in their connection. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest as he traced patterns on her luminescent skin. Whatever comes of this, she murmured, I want you to know, I love you. Not because you're the only option, not because of duty, but because you saw me as more than just the last of my kind. I love you too, he whispered into her dark curls. And whatever we've started here tonight, it's ours. Not the Council's, not history's. Ours. Outside their chamber, the stars continued their ancient dance, witnesses to the moment when two souls chose each other across the vast darkness of space. 6 weeks later, Dr. Cross delivered the news with barely contained excitement. The embryo is developing perfectly. All indicators suggest a healthy pregnancy with successful genetic integration. This is unprecedented in xenobiology. Ethan squeezed Kalitha's hand as they sat in the medical bay, both of them still processing the reality of what they'd accomplished. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save a species had become something far more personal and precious. How do you feel? Ethan asked Kalith as they walked back to their quarters, shared now, by mutual choice and council approval. Amazed, she said, one hand unconsciously moving to her still flat abdomen. For so long, I believed I would be the end of everything my people were. Now. She paused, her eyes bright with wonder. Now there will be someone who carries both our people's legacy. They had requested and been granted permission to establish a small research colony on Kepler 442b, a planet with conditions suitable for both human and Ziri physiology. The Council, thrilled with their success, had approved funding for a comprehensive cultural preservation program. "I've been thinking about names," Kaleth said as they settled onto their couch, Ethan's arm around her shoulders. "Zeeri tradition says children should be named for the harmony they'll bring to the world. But your human customs also matter now. What about choosing names that work in both languages?" Ethan suggested. "Something that honors both heritages." She tilted her head, considering. "Aria," she said softly. "It means song in your language, and in mine, Aria means new beginning." "Aria," Ethan repeated, testing the sound. "It's perfect. And if it's a boy?" "Caelum. Sky in Latin, but it also echoes Caelum, the Zeeri word for hope." Over the following months, as Kaletha's pregnancy progressed, they worked together to document everything they could about Zeeri culture. Ethan recorded hundreds of hours of her singing traditional songs, while she wrote down stories, philosophical teachings, and cultural practices. They were creating a living library for their children and their children's children. "Sometimes I wonder what they'll look like," Kaleth mused one evening, her hand resting on her now prominent belly. The baby had been active lately, and they could often see small movements rippling across her skin. "Beautiful," Ethan said simply, kissing her temple. "They'll be absolutely beautiful. Will they have your brown eyes or mine? Your hair color or my skin tone?" She laughed softly. "Dr. Cross says the genetic modeling suggests there'll be a unique blend, perhaps skin with a faint purple tint, or eyes that shift color like mine do when I'm emotional. Whatever they look like, they'll be ours," Ethan said. "And they'll grow up knowing they're loved, knowing where they came from, and knowing they're the bridge between two worlds." The baby kicked then, a strong thump that made them both laugh. "I think they approve," Kaleth said. As her due date approached, more couples began arriving at the colony, humans and the few other surviving Zeeri they discovered in various research facilities across the galaxy. It turned out Kaleth wasn't entirely alone after all, though the total population was still heartbreakingly small. Each couple that successfully bonded and conceived brought hope for a more stable genetic future. "Look at what we started," Ethan said one evening as they watched the sunset from their new home's terrace. The sky was painted in brilliant oranges and purples, and in the distance, they could see other couples walking together, other families beginning. "Not just us," Kaleth corrected gently. "Love started this. The choice to see beyond species, beyond duty, to the connections that make life worth living." Their daughter was born 3 weeks later, perfectly healthy and undeniably beautiful. She had Ethan's dark hair but with an iridescent sheen that caught the light like her mother's skin. Her eyes were a unique shade of lavender brown that seemed to shift between her parents' colors depending on the light. As they held her for the first time, tiny Aria looking up at them with alert, intelligent eyes, Ethan felt a profound sense of completion. Not just because they'd succeeded in preventing extinction, but because they'd created something entirely new, a family built on love rather than obligation. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's the future," Kaleth added softly. "Ours and everyone's." Outside their window, the twin moons of their new world rose over the horizon, casting silver light across the growing settlement. Somewhere in the distance, another couple's laughter drifted on the evening breeze. The Zeeri people would never be what they once were, but something new was being born, a hybrid culture, a bridge between worlds, a testament to the power of choice and love. Aria made a small sound, and both her parents leaned closer, already completely devoted to this tiny being who represented not an ending, but a beginning filled with infinite possibility.